spending an extra 30 minutes on the treadmill every day would help you lose body fat, then all of my executive clients would be ripped by now. Spoiler alert, they are not. And here's why. And also think about the following. If you compare an elite long distance runner, like a marathon runner, for example, to an elite sprinter, like a 100-meter sprinter, then think about their physiques and how they work out. One of them, the long distance runners, they spend a lot of time running, working out. And on the other side, the elite sprinters, their workouts are more intense. They're doing strength training, heavy weights and sprints, of course. And the other one spends way more time working out. And now compare their physique. One of them, the marathon runner, has way more body fat. They are still, of course, they're still healthy and fit, but they have way more body fat compared to an elite sprinter, even though the other one spends way less time working out. So what does that tell us about doing cardio? Now, what makes cardio and running, for example, so inefficient for losing body fat and keeping it off long term? So the thing is, if we're doing cardio, then we just have this short-term effect on losing body fat, because you're just burning the calories while you're doing the respective exercise, while you're out running. But it's essentially impossible to out-exercise or out-train a bad diet. So if you would think about how much you would have to run to just burn the calories that you consume by having a muffin or a pancake, for example, it's just insane. You won't be able to do that, especially not long-term. And if we now combine this with the fact that cardio, especially if we do it frequently and over a longer time, increases cortisol levels, then this just makes it even more difficult, because more cortisol negatively impacts sexual hormones, for example, but also leads to more belly fat storage, leads to more cravings, leads to worse sleep, more anxiety. So it has all of these side effects that essentially makes it more difficult to lose and keep off body fat. So it's the exact opposite of what you actually want long term. So instead, we need a form of exercise that helps us, prevents us from increasing these cortisol levels, but at the same time isn't just based on out-exercising our bad diet, but is based on increasing that basal metabolic rate and therefore giving you more food freedom. Because if you increase your basal metabolic rate, you can eat more calories without gaining weight, right? Because you just have more food freedom in the end of the day. And at the same time, again, we want to avoid this form of exercise from increasing cortisol levels, which again makes it from a physiological standpoint of view more difficult to lose weight. So what we're trying to do here is strength training, 30 to 40 minute strength training sessions, because this is the only way to really increase muscle mass, which is the only way to make sure that long-term your basal metabolic rate is increased. Muscle cells have higher mitochondrial activity and therefore help you burn more calories at rest. They need more energy, right? They use up more energy, and therefore you can have more calories without being in a caloric surplus. So you're still in a caloric deficit. So this form of exercise is really key to make sure that you're losing body fat. And we're not talking about building huge muscle right away, but just increasing muscle mass slightly will already help improve your basal metabolic rate and therefore give you more food freedom. Another form of exercise that not only from a time perspective is very efficient, but also from a metabolism perspective and therefore making fat loss sustainable is HIIT training, high intensity interval training. And I'm not talking about your average gym class, but what I'm talking about is 20 minutes, maximum 30-minute high intensity interval training sessions with high bursts of energy output over a couple seconds, 5, 10, 20 seconds, and then rest periods of 2 to 4 minutes in between those sets. Repeat that over a couple of times, maximum 20 to 30 minutes, and that's what actual high intensity interval training is. With both forms of exercise, it's absolutely crucial to make sure that we're tracking progress, tracking repetitions and weights for strength training, and increasing that session by session, because otherwise, by definition, it's not training. And only that progressive nature of the training will help us then grow muscle later on and actually improve that basal metabolic rate. Same thing with the interval training. It's absolutely crucial to have a way of tracking progress with your sprints, with your air bike sessions or watt bike sessions, so that we actually improve stamina and you learn to burn more glucose while you're working out. Now, with interval training, the effect is a bit different than for strength training. With interval training, you have this so-called epoch or afterburn effect, where 1 to 3 days after your actual session, your basal metabolic rate is increased. So you will also burn more calories at rest, but not by growing muscle, but by that afterburn effect that we only have with actual high intensity interval training. Now here's a good example of a client of mine, Till, who's a consultant, 65, traveling all the time, who lost 12 kilograms in 9 weeks by doing that exact thing that we've just been talking about, which is increasing the basal metabolic rate instead of just out-exercising a bad diet. By over time gradually increasing his caloric intake, and he now eats almost double of what he ate before working with me. So this just shows that he lost that weight in spite of now eating more, and the only way to make that happen is increasing his basal metabolic rate, because if we didn't change his metabolism, he would just be gaining weight, right? Because burning the same amount of calories but eating way more, consuming way more calories, of course leads to weight gain. So the mechanisms we used to increase his basal metabolic rate were a couple. So amongst others, it was increasing daily activity, improving sleep, and so on. But the ones that I want to focus on right now is that we use training, interval training and strength training in a progressive way. And most of that was actually just body weight based, because he was in hotel gyms, so he didn't have access to so much equipment. So what we did is we introduced progressive overload strength training, even though it was just body weight training, which then helped him to grow muscle, which then improved his basal metabolic rate. So now he's burning more calories at rest, which gives him the food freedom to eat more, but at the same time losing and keeping off that weight. On the other side, we also used high intensity interval training on an elliptical, or some also call it a cross trainer, also with a progressive nature. So he increased the resistance he used so that he had that afterburn effect, which also facilitated and boosted his fat loss progress. So go ahead and cut out your cardio like body pump, Zumba, high rocks or running sessions, and instead do 2 to 3 strength training, 30 to 40 minute strength training sessions weekly, and 15 to 30 minute interval training sessions weekly. Second of all, increase your protein intake to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight if you're a man, at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight if you're a woman. Now, if you need more specific workout or nutrition advice, then head over to my Instagram at philippweberc, give me a follow and check out my videos.